The following lesson is linked to Learning Outcome 4, Language. It addresses the assessment standard that requires learners to develop critical language awareness. Learners should be able to identify denotation and connotation.
Hi, welcome to this lesson extension. So far in this series on reading between the lines, we've looked at choice of information and how the order of facts influences how a reader might interpret an article. We've also looked at the choice of words and what sort of connotations these words may have. In this lesson, we're going to take a close look at some newspaper articles to understand more about choice of words. Do you remember what connotations are? Let's recap. Connotations are associations that words have that can be either positive or negative. We're now going to examine an editorial that considers some of the words used to describe the war in Iraq. This is how it begins. Shock and awe. Those are the two words US strategists have used to describe their massive aerial bombardment of Baghdad. The focus here is on the words shock and awe. The way that the editor has stated that these are the words of the US strategists makes one wonder whether the editor agrees with this description of events or not. Massive and aerial bombardment are other descriptions of the attack. Again, these are strong words that have connotations of the attack being on a large, destructive scale. Let's see how this article continues. But there are other words that spring to mind watching this gruesome exercise of firepower live on television. Shame, pity, and helplessness. Here, the tone has changed completely. Instead of the bombardment being described as awesome and massive, the editor uses words that have far more negative connotations. The word gruesome is associated with grisly cruelty. Suddenly, the reader is made aware of the human costs of impressive firepower, that they lead to shame, pity, and helplessness. These are the emotions that the editor believes the US strategists should be feeling. Instead of feeling proud of their superior weapons, they should feel shame at the destruction that they have caused and feel pity for the Iraqis who have suffered under them. He further highlights the vulnerability of civilians caught in the crossfire by choosing the word helplessness. The editor goes on to make good use of words with positive connotations, contrasting them against words with negative connotations. Let's take a look. Rational debate, persuasion, and moral authority have given way to sheer brute force and the ability to inspire fear. I'm sure that by now you can work out which words have positive connotations and which have negative ones. Rational debate, persuasion, and moral authority are associated with civilized means of trying to come to a peaceful settlement. They contrast sharply with the alternatives of sheer brute force and the ability to inspire fear. These words have connotations of violence and intimidation. What stance on war do you think the writer of this editorial has taken? Do you think that he supports a peaceful settlement and is upset that diplomatic means have failed? Or do you think he supports the United States in its decision to lead a war. Don't just accept someone's words without carefully considering whether you are being encouraged to adopt a position similar to the author. Here's another example from the same article. See if you can determine why the editor has chosen the words that he has. Tossed aside with cynicism are the voiceless, the children who live under heavy bombardment, the mothers who are sacrificing their sons and daughters to death. Here, a lot of words have been used that highlight family relationships: mothers, sons, daughters, children. Why do you think that these words have been used rather than just people or Iraqis? Help to highlight the fact that these are real people living in difficult circumstances. They have families. They love people. They will be mourned. The editor plays on the reader's emotions by using these words, by showing that they are not statistics or numbers or casualties of war, but they are real people, and each death is the death of a person. By foregrounding the fact that these voiceless people are tossed aside with cynicism, the editor is encouraging the reader not to be cynical, but instead to give serious attention to the people who have no voice, the children and the mothers. Let's now look at another example of an editorial in which the writer describes his dilemma in choosing which verb to include in his sentence. It comes from an article entitled "How a Life Can Be Crushed Without Much Protest" by David Bullard. In this column, David Bullard discusses an incident in which a young American human rights activist, acting as a human shield, was crushed by a bulldozer while trying to prevent a refugee camp from being demolished. He writes, "I was mesmerized last week by photographs of a 23-year-old American girl, Rachel Corrie, who stood in front of an Israeli army bulldozer trying to stop it from demolishing Palestinian buildings." Let's look at that paragraph again. Here I want you to concentrate on the word Bullard has used to describe his own reaction to this event. Here he says he was mesmerized by the photographs of Rachel Corrie standing in front of the bulldozer. What does mesmerized mean? What are the connotations? Mesmerized is hypnotized, fascinated, or spellbound. By using the word mesmerized, Bullard is giving the impression that he was captivated by the incident. I focus so much on the word mesmerized because later on in the article, he goes on to discuss his dilemma in choosing which word to use. He goes on like this. "I searched hard for the right word to begin this article, and the original copy had the word moved where mesmerized now appears. What difference would it have made if he had used the word moved instead of mesmerized? Well, this is how it would read. I was moved last week by photographs of a 23-year-old American girl, Rachel Corrie, who stood in front of an Israeli army bulldozer. Only one word has been changed, but how has it affected the meaning? What impression would it have given of Bullard's reaction to Rachel Corrie being crushed by a bulldozer? Says that if he had used the word moved, he would have appeared more compassionate than he actually was. He claims, "It didn't describe the combination of revulsion and anger that I felt." Bullard says that he was angry at Corrie for being naive enough to believe that she would have had any effect on the driver. He says that if he had used the word moved, it would have implied a compassion that he didn't really have. Now that you are more aware of the connotations that words have, keep an eye out for words that have been specifically chosen to sway your viewpoint. Words and their connotations are powerful tools for conveying opinion and attitude. Well, that's all we have for you this lesson. See you next time.